In the spring, your student, along with other students across the state, took the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. This test helps us understand how students are doing in two key content areas: English Language Arts, or ELA, and math. Keep in mind that this test is just one measure of your students' learning. You should use the information in this video, as well as what you observed during the school year, in future conversations with your student's teacher. You should have received 2 individual student reports, also known as ISRs, one for ELA and one for math. The purpose of this video is to help you understand this report so that you can support your students' learning. Let's start with English Language Arts and Literacy. Again, the paper ELA report looks about like this. There's helpful information throughout the report, including an explanation of the scores, good ways to use the information, and an in-depth examination of your students' results. The first section to really focus on is here. It shows the range that your students' scores fall into. Here is the score for your student. You can see it falls towards the bottom of Level 2. This means they partially met their grade level expectations. Here is the state average for your student's grade. You can use this as a reference to see how your student's score compares. Your student scored below the state average. In a moment, we will look at areas to focus on to help them improve. Note that many factors impact a student's performance on testing day. For that reason, there is a chance that if they ever took this test again, your student might score anywhere in this range. That includes scoring in Level 1. Let's look deeper at these ELA results. As you can see on the bottom of the page, your students' English Language Arts and Literacy results are made up of 2 parts, reading and writing. Their score in reading placed them here. That is below the state average. In writing, here is their score. That is below the state average. Let's explore further. Reading and writing are made up of these 5 areas. Reading is made up of these 3: literary text, informational text, and vocabulary. Writing is made up of written expression and knowledge and use of language conventions. Your students' results ranged from the lower level to the mid-level. We suggest asking your students' teachers for resources to support their learning in the lower level areas. Here is where your students scored in the middle range. They scored in the lower range in these areas. The IAR also provides your students' Lexile score. Use that score to match the reading skills of your student with books appropriate for their level. IAR also tells us how your students' performance changed since their last test, compared to other students. We call this growth. First, we look at their results from the last time they took this test. That was in 2021. Then, we look at how all students with similar results have performed since then, and we compare. Your students' change or growth was the same or better than 40% of students who had similar 2021 scores. So, slightly below the average. That was a lot of information. We encourage you to pause to review as needed. Let's look at math. The report looks like the one for ELA. Again, you can see the overall score for your student. Their math score is at a higher point than ELA. It is towards the top of Level 3. If your student took the test again, they might score somewhere in this range. Here is the state average for your student's grade. You can use this as a reference to see how your student's score compares. Your student scored above the state average. Math is made up of 4 key areas: major content, additional and supporting content, expressing mathematical reasoning, and modeling and application. Your students' results ranged from the lower level to the higher level. Remember the recommendations about speaking with your students' teachers about their scores in these different areas. Your student's strongest performance was in the area listed here. Here is where your students scored in the middle range. They scored in the lower range in this area. The IAR also provides your students' quantile score. We encourage you to utilize the resources provided to match your student with materials appropriate for their ability in mathematics skills and concepts. We have also learned how your students' math performance changed or grew since the last time. In math, their growth was the same or better than 83% of students whose scores were similar in 2021. So, their growth was above the average. Now let's review what we learned about your students' IAR results. Their English Language Arts and Literacy score was here. Here is the ELA area they should focus on first. And their math score was here. Here is the math area they should focus on first. Clearly, the Illinois Assessment of Readiness told us a lot about your student. Be sure to speak with your students' teachers about what you learned here, and be sure to click the buttons below to access helpful resources. This school year and into the future, ISBE's top priority is supporting your student in their educational journey